Hey guys, what's going on? This is Enox Gamer here, and we got some League of Legends content for you today. Doing a Vi Champion guide. I'm going to go over runes, masteries, the abilities, how I skill them, why I'm doing all this stuff as well, just so that it makes sense to you guys, and an item build. So I'm going to go over the abilities first because when you know how the abilities work and how our kit works in general, it's going to be a lot easier for me to explain why the runes, masteries, and items I pick are there. So, start off with the passive. This gives you a shield equal to 10% of your max health, so that is always something to keep in mind. So the more HP you build, the bigger the shield is. It gives it to you for 3 seconds, which is also something really good to note. And it's on a 18-second cooldown. So right now, at level 1, it gives you a shield for 57.72 HP, which is actually quite good. This scales decently well. Obviously, it's based off 10% of your max HP, so the more HP you build, the better, which means the tankier you build with health and stuff like that, the better your shield's going to be. It's kind of a good bonus just for building tanky anyway. Which is the focus of this. This is mainly for a top. You can use this for jungle if you want. You're going to be subbing in some items and starting items as well as things like machete or whatever, but this is mainly just going to be for an endgame build for a top lane Vi. So next we have Vault Breaker. So this is one of the most important abilities that I want to talk about and I want to go over. One, because as you can see, if you hold Q, it charges it gives you an indicator, but you can also still move with that, and it acts as a dash. Now, the important thing is it has a very long cooldown level 1, which is 18 seconds, which is tied to your level 1 passive as well. But the nice thing about this ability is that it acts as a dash. It actually knocks opponents up, which is really good. The other thing that's very nice about this ability as well is that it acts as a flash, almost. You can get over walls and stuff like that with this ability, which means that if you are counter jungling, because you are going to be top lane a lot, if you decide to go do that, you have an easy escape over Baron Pit or something like that. So it's a lot of utility, and it does a ridiculous amount of damage when you charge it fully. If you do not charge it, it's still going to do the knockup and stuff like that. The problem is it does significantly less damage. As you can see, dashes forward dealing 50 plus 11 damage to 123. So it does either 61 or 123 damage based on how long you charged it. It's physical damage and applies denting blows, which is her W, and deals 75% damage to minions and monsters. Stops upon colliding with an enemy champion, knocking it back. So it knocks it back, it knocks it up a little bit. The key thing here is that it slows your movement speed by 15% while increasing damage and dash range over 1.25 seconds. So you're actually moving at a slower pace, which means it kind of sucks. It's not so much that the ability is bad, it just means that if you're chasing someone, you have to make sure that you do a max charge to get the best benefit out of it, but you are slowed. Now, there are a few things in this build and in my masteries and stuff like that that are going to help this, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Next is the W, which is Denting Blows, which is pretty badass, I think. I like this ability because it gives you a lot of shit. Every third attack on the same target deals an additional 6% plus 0.5%, so it scales off AD, which is very nice, which means that if you get things like Bloodthirster or you're naturally building AD, it's going to help the scaling as well. Of the target's maximum health, which is another thing to note, as physical damage. So it does damage based off their maximum HP, not their current HP, which is always very good because that means that you're going to do a significant amount more damage to tanks or people that build HP. It reduces its armor by 20%, which is very nice, and it ties into this build as well, and grants you 30% attack speed for 4 seconds. Now, it does have a max against damage to the monsters, but that doesn't really matter, who cares. The nice thing about this is that it scales off AD, it gives you % armor reduction and attack speed. This basically makes it so that you can build a lot of really weird items, but still do a lot of damage. Next we have is E, which is Excessive Force. Causes the next basic attack to deal 5 plus 86, which scales off both attack damage and ability power. in physical damage. So armor is still going to reduce this even if you are getting ability power from something to the target and enemies behind it. So this is your bread and butter wave clear. This resets your auto attack timer, and there's a few Vi buffs, more like tweaks as well, that are coming into a future patch that's going to help this, because right now when you use excessive blows, it slows down your attack timer, which means that if you auto attack excessive blow, your following auto attack is going to be much slower than it would be. So they're going to be fixing that so it doesn't feel as clunky and slow, which means that trading a top lane is going to be a lot better with E. Charges a new punch every 14 seconds and can hold 2 charges at once. So you can't just keep spamming it, or else it would be overpowered as hell and you would push like a boss all day and win your lane. This is the ability that I max first in top lane. It provides you with a lot of good wave clear. Nice harass, because you can harass behind minions, providing you're hitting their minions. And it's really good for trading as well. If you auto attack E, it does a decent amount of damage, and if you put in a Q in there at some point in time, your trading becomes very nice. And you can only hold 2 charges, so keep in mind you got to pay attention to that. You want to make sure that you always have charges when you need them, and you're not just using it for the sake of using it. Last but not least, we have Assault and Battery, which is Vi's ult. Targets an enemy champion, which means you can't use it on any other monsters or mins or anything like that. It has to be on a champion. Knocking it up for 1.25 seconds, dealing 200 plus 23 physical damage. So the scaling on this is, it's actually not too bad, but realistically Vi's total damage output isn't that fantastic. She works a lot better with the enemy, or with your jungler, or with your team in any sort of way. She definitely sets up team fights really well. While charging, you are immune to crown control, so that make sure you keep that in mind. If you are getting ganked and the enemy jungler is coming behind you and you feel like they are going to CC you really hard, or whatever they have to CC you, you can use this to become immune to that CC. It will knock aside enemies in the way, dealing 75% damage to them, which means if you target the AD carry, AP carry, whoever in the back lane, anyone in the front is going to get knocked aside, clearing a path to them. They're going to take 75% of the total damage that you deal with this ability to those people, and you will get to your target, knocking them up and CCing them. So it's pretty ridiculous if used correctly. It costs 100 minutes on 130 second cooldown at level 1, and once you get this, your combo is a lot easier, because instead of using your Q to get in range, you can actually use Assault and Battery, and if they flash or something like that, hopefully you can use Q to catch up, give them that little knockback, throw another E in there, and stuff like that. So those are the abilities. I'll go over runes and masteries, and I'll throw in some gameplay and stuff like that so you can kind of see the potential of Vi. I'll go over build as well, and yeah. Alright guys, so we talked about the abilities, and what I want to do is tie the rune page into the abilities as well, and why you scale them a certain way. So I do start off with E and max that first. Now Q does do more damage. The problem is you have to charge it and you have to land it, which, not saying that's the hardest thing to do, but E is just a lot safer to go, and it's for sure damage. You know you're going to land that, and it also scales very well with AD, which is why I run the rune page I do. I do run attack damage. Now there's 2 ways you can kind of go with Vi. If you want to max Q first, you can do like a attack damage armor pen page, but if you're going to be going E, typically I just go physical damage. So I do Mark's Quince, and then one of my glyphs is actually attack damage as well. That gives you 16 attack damage at level 1, just with runes alone, which is very nice. And then I do armor seals and magic resist per level glyphs for the remainder. Next, I'm going to go into Masteries. So there's the defensive page that I run, so it's 921 offense. And the reason why I go defense, just because it helps make you a lot tankier, and it scales very well into late game as well. You don't really need a lot of the damage multipliers and stuff like that later on in the offense tree. You can go down the offense if you want to, but I typically just like to go defense. I pick up Relentless, which reduces the effectiveness of slows by 15%, and the reason being is because it actually lowers the slow amount that your Q does. When you charge your Q up, you are slowed for 15% of your movement speed. So it scales with how much movement speed you have, and this just helps lower that so you're a little bit faster while you're charging up your Q, which is a big thing. Because if you fall behind and you can't actually land your Q, then you basically can't do anything. There's some runes you can switch around, so if you're going against like a Rumble or something like that, you can go into Resistance and take out the Hardiness, switch that armor for that MR, stuff like that. But typically this is just pretty standard. Cooldown reduction is a little bit better than the 4% attack speed. You are basically heavily reliant on your Q and E to do a lot of your damage. You're not so much an auto attacker. You do auto attack, but your E later on in the game just hits like a truck. And then we go down to the Fury, get that 12 attack damage at level 18, and then the 8% armor pen, which is kind of obvious. If you're going to run something like Teleport or something, don't bother going with Summoner's Wrath. You can put that other point into your cooldown reduction, or if you want to go Butcher or whatever you want to do. This is just kind of a standard page. You can run this for most tops. You don't have to do this. You can do some other things. I do go into Unyielding for that champion reduction, and I go into Block as well so that I can just sustain against those ADs. So you can switch some of these around. So we're going to go into the build. So there's a few things you can do. This isn't kind of just like a one-trick pony type build type thing. I mean, you can do a lot more with it. So typically, and you can also start off with different items as well. I mean, depending on what you want to go with or who you're going against and what you need for that time. But typically an endgame build is going to look something like Frozen Mallet, Black Cleaver, Bloodthirster, Randuin's, Maw of Malmortius, and then one of 3 boots, which would be either Swiftness, Ninja Tabby, or Mercs. Obviously, the reason for Ninja Tabby is if you want more armor, if they're heavy auto attackers, if their AD carries getting fed. Merc Treads if you need some more MR, and if they have a ridiculous amount of CC. And Boots of Swiftness are actually really good because it helps reduce that slow on your Q by a significant amount. Now, as far as tier 3 boots go, you can pick up Fure, which is pretty much the best thing to get, I think, for the most part. If you're going to be running Teleport, then Distortion boots, I think, or whatever one that reduces your flash and teleport is a lot better. You can also run Home Guard, you can also run Alacrity. It doesn't really matter, it just depends on what you like. Fure for me is the best because it increases your movement speed by 12%, which is huge. Other things you can do as well, you can do Mercurial Scimitar, you can do Warmogs, GAs in there as well, Runic Bulwark if your jungler isn't going to get that, or if your support's not going to get that as well. If you need more magic resist, you can kind of switch out some of these items, but typically what this build is aimed at is a lot of health. You do get quite a bit of armor. You have that slow tied to your auto attack with Randuin's. You have a ridiculous amount of armor pen with your W, your runes, and Black Cleaver, which gives you some more health as well, some CDR. You have some sustain and a lot of AD in Bloodthirster. Maw gives you that magic resist plus that shield and a little bit more attack damage as well, based on your health and stuff like that. So it's a very well-rounded build. Now you can switch out Maw for things like Runic Bulwark if you need to get that, or if you want to just go something like GA. If they have a lot of CC and you need to get out, then Mercurial Scimitar is really good, except the problem is it's really expensive. So some of these items, I mean, like this full build costs quite a bit for the most part, but you can get a decent amount of these items finished. I mean, like, you should have no problem getting like a Black Cleaver, Frozen Mallet, and Randuin's BT with boots or something like that, and that's a pretty standard build. You can also get like early Hex Drinker and stuff. You don't have to finish a lot of the items. A lot of these things like Warden's Mail or Hex Drinker, things like that, like the mid items that you would build towards these final items are really good in the mid game. So depending on what you need, just build whatever you feel like. If you're going against an AP, then just rush them off if you really want to, and some HP. It helps scale your passive. You get a lot of attack damage, so you're going to do a significant amount of damage, and you're pretty beefy. You're not supposed to be a main tank with her or anything like that. You just want to be able to soak up a lot of damage so you can get your combo off and hopefully kill their AD carry or AP carry. So that's it for me, guys. I hope you enjoyed this guide. It's a little bit different from the other one that I did, the Nautilus Jungle Guide, which you can check out on my channel as well. Hopefully this one was a little bit better, a little bit more informed. I know that I talk a little bit longer, and these videos are, you know, between 15 minutes a lot of times, so I just hope that I had a lot of detail in here for you guys, and hopefully you can go out there and start kicking some ass with Vi. Thank you very much. If you want to comment, rate, subscribe, all that good stuff, I do appreciate it, and I'll see you guys in the next video.